Why it sucks to be born as a beluga whale. At first glance, the beluga whale seems like one of the happiest creatures on Earth. With their bright white skin, playful nature, and a face that looks like it's always smiling, belugas have earned the nickname, the sea canary. People love them, aquariums showcase them, and social media can't get enough of their cheerful appearance. But here's the truth. That smile, it's just an illusion. Behind it lies a life that's anything but easy. Imagine being born into a world of freezing Arctic waters, where temperatures can drop to levels that would send most animals into shock. You're immediately on the menu for hungry predators, polar bears waiting by breathing holes, orcas hunting in packs, and sometimes even humans. And that's before we even get to the constant noise of ships, the pollution seeping into your food, or the fact that the very ice you depend on for survival is melting faster than ever. For belugas, survival is a daily battle. Their world looks magical, but it's full of dangers that most of us never think about. Today, we're diving deep into why, despite that permanent grin, it really sucks to be born as a beluga whale. Fun, cute, but misleading. When you see a beluga whale for the first time, it's easy to think, wow, what a happy animal. They're bright white, round, and bubbly. They have that goofy little forehead bump, and of course, the famous smile that seems permanently etched into their face. But here's the kicker. Belugas aren't smiling because they're happy. In fact, they're not smiling at all. It's just the way their jaw is shaped. Their so-called grin is a complete illusion of anatomy. If you were to judge them by facial expressions, you'd think belugas are living their best life. The reality, though, is far less cheerful. The sea canary illusion. Belugas have earned the nickname sea canaries, and for good reason. Unlike many whales, they're incredibly vocal. Scientists have recorded them producing whistles, chirps, clicks, and even something that sounds eerily close to human voices. To an untrained ear, it's almost like they're talking. In fact, some submariners in the Cold War once mistook beluga calls for human voices coming from the deep ocean. Imagine that, military crews on high alert, thinking they were hearing enemy divers, only to find out it was just a pod of chatty belugas. All of this vocal playfulness makes them seem cheerful, like the happy-go-lucky dolphins of the North. But don't be fooled. Their voices aren't songs of joy. They're survival tools. Belugas use sound to navigate the frozen maze of Arctic ice, to hunt in murky waters where light barely penetrates, and to stay in contact with their pods. So that cheerful choir? It's really more like a lifeline, a desperate adaptation to one of the harshest environments on Earth. Or to the smiling face. That isn't a smile. Now let's talk about that face. Belugas are famous for their so-called smile. If you look at photos or videos online, you'll see it. Their lips curve upward, giving them this constant cartoonish grin. It makes us want to believe they're happy, friendly, and harmless. But here's the truth. Their mouth shape has nothing to do with emotions. It's just bone structure and skin folds. In reality, a beluga could be starving, stressed, or terrified, and still look like the happiest whale alive. Their smile is nothing more than a mask of nature. We humans just can't help projecting our feelings onto it. That fake smile is also part of why belugas became popular in aquariums. People see a beluga behind glass, smiling, and they assume it's content. But captivity tells a different story. Many belugas in tanks show signs of stress, repetitive swimming patterns, shortened lifespans, and even depression. Behind that grin is an animal struggling to survive in an environment it was never built for. Case of the missing dorsal fin. Here's another weird thing about belugas. They don't have a dorsal fin. If you picture a dolphin or a killer whale, that tall, sleek fin on their back is a defining feature. But belugas? Nothing. Just a smooth, blubbery back. To some, it makes them look a little unfinished, like nature stopped building halfway through. But there's a reason for it. Belugas live in icy waters where tall dorsal fins would be a liability. Imagine trying to swim under sheets of ice with a big sail sticking out of your back. You'd be scraping yourself constantly. So evolution got rid of the fin. Instead, belugas have a tough dorsal ridge they can use to break through thinner ice when they need to breathe. This adaptation is genius for survival under ice, but it also has its downsides. Without a fin, belugas don't have the same stability in open water as dolphins or orcas. They can't slice through waves with the same precision, and they don't look quite as majestic when they surface. If dolphins are like sleek sports cars, belugas are more like bumper cars, round, clumsy looking, and built for a completely different environment. Practical, yes. Elegant, not so much. Me, the white coat problem. Of course, the most obvious thing about a beluga is its color. Adults are pure white, making them look like little ghosts of the sea. Beautiful, right? Actually, it's kind of a curse. That bright white skin offers no camouflage in the open ocean. A killer whale can spot a beluga from miles away. Even in the icy Arctic, a white beluga against a backdrop of blue water is basically a giant glowing target. Young belugas aren't even born white. They start out gray or brown, and it takes years before they fade into their ghostly adult form. That means calves actually blend in better than their parents. Once they grow into full adulthood, though, camouflage is gone. In fact, scientists think belugas only develop their white skin because of the ice. When swimming beneath frozen sheets, that ghostly color helps them blend into the snowy world above, making it harder for predators below to see them. But as Arctic ice melts away, that same adaptation becomes less useful, leaving belugas dangerously exposed in open waters. Cute, but built for survival. So yes, belugas are adorable. They chirp, they grin, they even nod their heads like they're dancing to music. But every single one of those traits we think of as cute is actually just a survival feature. Their smile hides stress. Their songs aren't joy. They're sonar. Their missing dorsal fin isn't funny. It's protection. And their snow-white skin, while stunning, paints a big bullseye on their backs in the wrong environment. The truth is, belugas are masters of survival in a brutal, frozen wilderness. But in the eyes of predators, hunters, and even humans who keep them in tanks, those same features become weaknesses. The beluga whale may look like it's always having a good time, but the reality of being born as one is far from cheerful. 2. Growing up beluga, a fragile beginning. Imagine this. You're born not in a cozy den or on a warm summer day, but in the frigid waters of the Arctic. The moment you enter the world, the environment is already trying to freeze you to death. Your only lifeline, a mother who will stay by your side day and night, feeding, guiding, and protecting you from the countless dangers waiting just below the ice. For beluga whales, childhood is not a time of carefree play. It's a trial by survival, an endless test against predators, starvation, and separation. And for many calves, that test is one they won't pass. 2 are the gray ghosts, why beluga babies don't start white. When most people picture a beluga whale, they imagine a sleek, ghostly white animal gliding through icy waters. But belugas aren't born with that signature look. Calves actually start life in shades of gray or even brown. In some ways, this dull coloring is a blessing. A dark calf blends into the shadows of the water far better than its glowing white parents. This camouflage buys them precious time during their most vulnerable years. It takes anywhere from 5 to 7 years for a beluga to turn completely white. The transformation is almost symbolic. As they grow into adulthood, they trade the camouflage of youth for the uniform of the adult pod. But with that whiteness comes risk. It makes them easier to spot in open waters, a glowing beacon for predators like orcas. In a cruel twist, the very trait that makes belugas iconic to us humans is also the one that makes them more vulnerable once they're grown. The bond between mother and calf. At birth, a beluga calf is about 4 to 5 feet long and weighs around 120 pounds, roughly the size of a small adult human, but infinitely more fragile. From the very first breath, the calf depends almost entirely on its mother. For the first 2 years of life, its diet consists mainly of her nutrient-rich milk. And this isn't ordinary milk. It's thick, almost creamy, packed with fat to keep the calf warm and growing in freezing waters. During these early years, the mother is more than a food source. She's a constant protector. In pods, mothers often form nursery groups, sticking together with other mothers and calves for safety. These groups act like floating daycares. Adults share the responsibility of watching over the young, while the pod moves together in search of food and safe waters. But the role of the mother goes deeper than just feeding and guarding. She also teaches. Calves learn how to breathe under ice, how to follow migration routes, and how to use sound to communicate. Without this maternal guidance, a calf is almost certain to die. The predators, a calf's worst nightmare. Even with a mother's protection, the Arctic is full of creatures waiting for an opportunity to snatch a calf. Orcas are among the most dangerous threats. They're intelligent, coordinated hunters who know that calves are the weakest link in a pod. By rushing into a group of belugas, they can create chaos, splitting calves from their mothers and isolating them. Once that happens, the outcome is grim. On the ice above, another danger lurks: polar bears. These massive predators will wait silently at breathing holes, ready to swipe at any beluga that comes up for air. Calves, being smaller and less cautious, are particularly vulnerable. In some regions, polar bears rely heavily on belugas as a food source, and a young calf is an easy meal compared to a wary adult. And then, of course, there are humans. In some Arctic communities, belugas are traditionally hunted for food, blubber, and cultural practices. While indigenous hunting is typically sustainable, other human threats, such as commercial capture for aquariums, target calves and juveniles. Taken from their mothers, these young belugas face lifelong stress and often early deaths in captivity. Treke milk, fat, and growth, the science of survival. For the first year of life, a beluga calf's survival depends almost entirely on its mother's milk. Unlike human milk, beluga milk is a powerhouse, sometimes over 30% fat. This is critical for building the thick blubber layer that calves need to stay insulated in freezing Arctic waters. The more blubber a calf can store, the better its chances of surviving icy currents and long dives. As they grow, calves slowly transition to solid food like fish, squid, and crustaceans. But this transition isn't immediate. It's a gradual process that takes years. Even after they begin hunting, many calves continue nursing into their second year, sometimes even longer. This prolonged dependency is part of why maternal survival is so critical for belugas. If a mother dies, her calf almost always dies with her. The role of the pod. Belugas are among the most social whales on Earth. Calves don't just grow up with their mothers, they grow up in a community. Pods can range from a few individuals to hundreds of whales during migrations. Within these pods, calves are constantly learning. They mimic adults, practice their calls, and develop social bonds that will guide them for life. But this dependence on the pod is a double-edged sword. If a calf gets separated, whether during an orca attack, a sudden ice shift, or human interference, its chances of survival drop dramatically. Without the safety of the group, a lone calf is little more than a defenseless target in a vast frozen ocean. The high cost of childhood. For belugas, childhood is the most dangerous stage of life. Scientists estimate that a significant percentage of calves never reach adulthood. Predators, starvation, illness, and separation claim many before they've had the chance to grow. And even those that survive still face a long road. Belugas don't reach full maturity until around 7 to 9 years of age. Imagine spending nearly a decade just getting ready for adulthood, all while dodging threats from every direction. A symbol of resilience. And yet, despite the dangers, belugas persist. For every calf that falls, others survive, guided by strong mothers, supported by protective pods, and adapted to one of the harshest environments on Earth. They may start life as gray, vulnerable little shadows, but those who make it through grow into the ghostly white whales that have captured our imagination. Still, the reality remains. Growing up as a beluga whale is not a happy-go-lucky childhood. It's a gauntlet of predators: cold, hunger, and dependence. Every smiling adult beluga you see has survived against staggering odds. Their very existence is proof of resilience, but also a reminder of just how much it sucks to be born as a beluga whale. 3. The Arctic isn't cute. The illusion of a winter wonderland. When people picture the Arctic, they often think of sparkling icebergs, dancing northern lights, and a pristine frozen wilderness. To the human eye, it looks magical, almost like a giant snow globe at the top of the world. But for a beluga whale, this place is no fairy tale. It's a battlefield of extremes. Temperatures plummet well below freezing. The ocean is covered in shifting sheets of ice. Food disappears without warning, and every mistake can cost your life. The Arctic isn't cute, it's cruel. And if you're a beluga, it's the only home you'll ever know. Life in freezing water, a constant struggle. Let's start with the obvious, the water itself. Belugas live in seas that hover just below the freezing point of fresh water. For us humans, that kind of water would kill in minutes. For belugas, it's home. But surviving in this frozen world requires some serious biological tricks. Their biggest weapon? Blubber. Thick layers of fat wrap their bodies like natural wetsuits, sometimes measuring over 10 centimeters thick. This insulation traps heat and keeps their core body temperature stable, even when the ocean is cold enough to form ice around them. But blubber is both a blessing and a curse. It keeps belugas alive, but it also slows them down. Unlike sleek dolphins, belugas are bulkier, less hydrodynamic, and they burn through energy quickly when food is scarce. And blubber alone isn't enough. Belugas also rely on a high metabolism to generate internal heat. They eat constantly when food is available, storing energy as fat reserves for leaner months. Calves, however, have thinner blubber and weaker metabolisms, making them much more vulnerable. Without the constant protection of their mothers, they could freeze before they ever reach adulthood. Even for adults, the cold isn't just uncomfortable, it's a lifelong burden. Every breath of air is icy. Every dive into the depths means facing crushing cold that seeps into every muscle. Their bodies are designed to endure it, yes, but enduring doesn't mean thriving. It means survival, one shiver at a time. Trapped beneath the ice. If the cold water weren't enough, the Arctic adds another hazard, ice itself. The ocean isn't just open water, it's a shifting maze of frozen ceilings that can turn deadly in seconds. Belugas need to breathe air, but when the surface is sealed by thick sheets of ice, finding a hole can mean the difference between life and suffocation. There are stories from Inuit hunters of belugas becoming trapped under ice, their desperate exhalations bubbling beneath frozen sheets as they search for an opening. Some find one in time, others don't. Orcas, with their sharp dorsal fins, rarely risk such icy environments. But belugas, with their rounded backs and missing dorsal fins, have evolved specifically to handle these conditions. They can sometimes break through thin ice using the hard ridge on their backs or even their heads. But against thick winter ice, even that adaptation fails. Imagine swimming in total darkness, lungs running out of air, while above you stretches an endless ceiling of frozen death. That's the reality of being a beluga in winter. Every dive, every movement, comes with the risk of being locked beneath the ice, trapped in a silent tomb of your own habitat. The vanishing feast, food scarcity in the Arctic. Of course, even if you manage to survive the cold and dodge the ice, there's still another problem. Finding enough to eat. Belugas feed on fish, squid, shrimp, and other small prey. But in the Arctic, food doesn't stay in one place. Schools of fish migrate with the seasons, shifting with the ice and the currents. Some years prey is abundant. Other years it vanishes without warning. For a beluga pod, this means constant movement. They can't just settle in one area and expect food to show up. They must follow migration routes, diving to depths of 700 meters or more to hunt, scanning the darkness with echolocation to locate prey. This takes energy they can't afford to waste if the hunt fails. Calves, again, face the harshest odds. They can't dive as deep or as long as adults, and they don't yet have the skill to catch slippery prey. For them, hunger is a constant shadow. If their mothers can't find enough food to keep producing milk, calves weaken and often starve. In years of scarcity, entire generations of young belugas can be wiped out. The endless journey. Pods on the move. Because food is always shifting, belugas are a species of wanderers. Their pods travel hundreds, even thousands of miles across the Arctic in search of prey and safe waters. In summer, they gather in shallow estuaries and river mouths, shedding their old skin layers and nursing calves in relatively warmer waters. In winter, they retreat to deeper seas, navigating through ice-choked channels and dark, frigid depths. This constant movement takes a toll. Calves must keep up with adults, even when exhausted. Mothers must balance feeding themselves with caring for their young. Older or sick individuals risk falling behind and being left vulnerable to predators. The pod moves because it must. Any hesitation can mean starvation. And unlike migratory birds who can follow the same paths year after year, belugas live in a landscape that is constantly changing. Ice melts, reforms, and drifts unpredictably. Rivers flood, then freeze. What was a safe haven one year may be a deadly trap the next. For belugas, there is no home in the sense that we know it, only a constant, exhausting journey through a world of moving hazards. To the daily reality, survival mode. When you put it all together, the picture becomes clear. Life for a beluga in the Arctic isn't a playful dance beneath the northern lights. It's a grinding struggle against cold, ice, hunger, and endless movement. Every day is survival mode. Every day is a fight to breathe, to eat, to stay with the pod, and to outlast the predators that stalk them. Yes, belugas may look like they're smiling, but in truth, their smiles mask a brutal truth. Being born into the Arctic is like being thrown into an obstacle course designed to kill you. Only the strong, the lucky, and the endlessly resilient make it through. Closing for this section. So the next time you see a picture of a beluga floating gracefully in icy waters, remember this, that beauty hides brutality. The Arctic may look magical from afar, but for the creatures who live there, it's a constant battle for survival. And for belugas, that battle starts the moment they take their first breath. Or predators everywhere. No rest for the ghosts of the Arctic. Beluga whales may live up to 70 years, but every single day of that life is lived under the shadow of predators. Unlike some animals that face threats only when young, belugas never truly escape danger. Whether it's stealthy orcas, patient polar bears, or humans with harpoons, belugas are always one mistake away from disaster. For a creature that looks like it's always smiling, its world is anything but friendly. Orcas, the ocean's wolf pack. Let's start with the most feared predator, the orca. Orcas aren't just killers, they're strategists. They don't rely on brute force alone. They hunt like wolves with coordination and precision. When orcas target belugas, they rarely go after adults in prime condition. They look for the weak, the sick, and especially the calves. One common strategy is chaos. A pod of orcas will rush into a group of belugas, scattering them in every direction. In the confusion, calves are separated from their mothers. Once isolated, they don't stand a chance. Orcas can swim faster, dive deeper, and overwhelm a calf in minutes. But orcas don't stop there. They're known to exploit the ice itself. Sometimes they'll chase belugas into shallow bays or against ice floes, trapping them. In these situations, the beluga's only escape is to find breathing holes or slip under the ice. But orcas are patient hunters. They'll wait, circling, until their prey has no choice but to surface and then strike. To make matters worse, orcas have cultural hunting techniques passed down through generations. What one pod learns, others copy. This means belugas aren't just up against instinctive predators, they're up against predators that innovate. Polar bears, silent ambush predators. As if the orcas weren't enough, danger also comes from above. Polar bears, the rulers of Arctic land, are opportunistic hunters. Belugas, especially calves, are high on their menu when the chance arises. Here's how it works. In spring and early summer, when sea ice breaks apart, belugas gather at small breathing holes. Polar bears know this. They wait silently at the edge, sometimes for hours watching the water. The moment a beluga surfaces for air, the bear swipes with its massive paw, dragging the whale onto the ice. For a calf, the struggle is usually over instantly. Even adults can fall victim if they surface in the wrong spot. Entire pods have been seen trapped in shrinking pools of open water, with polar bears picking them off one by one. It's not a fair fight. On land, belugas are helpless. Out of water, their own body weight crushes their organs. All a bear has to do is drag them a few feet from the hole, and the whale's fate is sealed. Humans, the oldest predator. And then, of course, there are humans. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples of the Arctic have hunted belugas. To the Inuit, Chukchi, and other northern cultures, belugas are more than prey. They are survival. Their blubber, called muktuk, is rich in vitamins and energy. Their meat feeds families. Their skin can be used for tools and materials. These hunts are sustainable, done with respect and tradition, and belugas remain central to the culture of Arctic peoples. But modern history tells a darker story. Commercial hunting in the 19th and 20th centuries decimated some beluga populations, with thousands killed for oil, hides, and meat. Even today, some belugas are captured alive for aquariums, a stressful ordeal that shortens their lifespans dramatically. Unlike indigenous hunts, these commercial pressures push belugas beyond their natural limits. And belugas don't just face direct hunting. Human activity has turned the Arctic into a noisy, polluted, and shrinking home. Ships collide with whales, oil exploration disrupts their migration, and toxins from industry accumulate in the fish they eat, poisoning them slowly over decades. In many ways, humans are now the most dangerous predator of all, not just because of hunting, but because of everything else we bring into their environment. The constant weight of threat. When you add it all up, the picture is grim. Orcas in the water, polar bears on the ice, humans with harpoons and ships. Belugas don't get to relax. Not as calves, not as adults, not ever. Every choice they make, where to swim, when to surface, which path to take, carries the risk of death. For a species that can live up to 70 years, that's a lifetime of pressure. Imagine surviving decade after decade, always aware that something is stalking you, above or below. It's no wonder belugas rely so heavily on their pods for safety. Alone, they're easy prey. Together, they have a fighting chance. So yes, belugas may look like they're smiling, but behind that smile is a lifetime of vigilance, a constant balancing act between survival and extinction. 5. Climate change crisis. A home disappearing. For thousands of years, beluga whales have called the Arctic home. Its frozen waters, drifting ice flows, and frigid rivers created a unique ecosystem that shaped every aspect of their lives. But now that home is disappearing. Climate change is transforming the Arctic faster than almost any other place on Earth. Ice that once persisted year-round is now breaking up earlier in spring and forming later in autumn. Entire regions that were once reliable refuges for belugas are vanishing before their eyes. Imagine living in a house that melts and shifts with the seasons. But worse, that house isn't just a roof over your head. It's where you feed, breed, and hide from predators. As the Arctic ice retreats, belugas are forced into new areas, exposing them to unfamiliar threats and reducing the safety of their traditional migration routes. Arctic migration patterns disrupted. Belugas are migratory creatures. They follow the movements of fish and squid, traveling hundreds of miles every year. Traditionally, they move to shallow estuaries in the summer to calve, then return to deep offshore waters in the winter. But with warming temperatures, these carefully timed migrations are being thrown off balance. Fish populations shift in response to changing water temperatures, forcing belugas to chase their prey into new, unpredictable areas. Disrupted migration has serious consequences. Calves may be born in suboptimal areas, away from rich feeding grounds. Mothers may struggle to find enough food to produce milk, putting newborns at risk. And when pods stray into unfamiliar waters, they may encounter predators or human activity that they would normally avoid. Noise pollution, a silent killer. Belugas rely on sound for nearly every aspect of life. They use echolocation to navigate under ice, locate prey in murky waters, and communicate with members of their pod over vast distances. But the Arctic is no longer as quiet as it once was. Shipping lanes are expanding, oil and gas exploration has increased, and industrial activity produces a constant, low-frequency hum that permeates the water. For belugas, this noise is more than an annoyance. It drowns out their calls, making it harder to find food or stay in contact with family. Some pods have been observed altering their calls, raising the volume, or changing frequency in response to noise pollution. This takes energy, creates stress, and may still not be enough to overcome the cacophony of industrial sound. Imagine trying to talk to your family across a stadium while someone is blasting a concert nearby. That's what life is like for these whales every day. Warmer waters, diseases and invasive species. The warming Arctic is also bringing a host of new challenges. As water temperatures rise, pathogens that were previously limited to more temperate regions are now entering Arctic waters. Belugas, which evolved in cold environments, have immune systems not adapted to fight some of these diseases. Outbreaks can decimate populations, especially calves and weaker individuals. In addition, invasive species are moving north. Fish, crustaceans, and even jellyfish that were never part of the Arctic ecosystem now compete with native prey, reducing the food supply for belugas. Predators that were once rare in certain regions are expanding their ranges, creating new threats for whales that thought they were safe. The Arctic is becoming a completely new environment, and belugas are struggling to keep up. So it's the domino effect. All these factors, melting ice, disrupted migration, noise pollution, disease, and invasive species, combine to create a crisis for belugas. It's not just one threat, it's a domino effect. A calf born in the wrong place may struggle to find food. A mother stressed by noise may produce less milk. Predators exploit weakened individuals, and populations decline. What was once a resilient species is now facing unprecedented pressure. Scientists have documented shrinking population sizes in some beluga groups and warn that without urgent action, the balance of the Arctic ecosystem could be permanently disrupted. Belugas are highly social, and the loss of even a few individuals can ripple through the pod, affecting communication, hunting strategies, and social structure. In essence, climate change doesn't just threaten individual whales, it threatens the very culture of the pod. Hope and adaptation. Despite these challenges, belugas are survivors. They have endured for thousands of years through glacial cycles, predator pressures, and environmental changes. Some populations are showing signs of adaptation, shifting migration patterns, and finding new feeding grounds. Conservation efforts are underway, focusing on protecting habitats, regulating industrial activity, and monitoring health. But time is running out. The Arctic is changing faster than ever, and the fate of the beluga whale hangs in the balance. Their story is a warning and a reminder. Even creatures that seem untouchable, even those perfectly adapted to their environment, are vulnerable in the face of climate change. The smiling ghost of the Arctic is in peril, and what happens in these icy waters will resonate throughout the oceans of the world. 6. Social struggles. Life in the pod. Beluga whales are some of the most social creatures on Earth. They rely on one another for survival, guidance, and communication. A pod isn't just a group of whales, it's a family, a community, and a support network. Young calves learn from their mothers and other adults, hunting skills are shared, and safety in numbers is paramount. At first glance, it seems like a perfect social system, but as with any community, living in close quarters can bring tension, drama, and even tragedy. Beluga pods vary in size from a handful of individuals to hundreds, depending on the season and migration patterns. During migrations, pods may merge into massive supergroups, creating a chaotic but necessary network for survival. Here every whale has a role. Some are leaders guiding the pod, others are sentries watching for predators, and some are simply learners, following the older whales to understand the dangers and rewards of the Arctic. Dominance and male rivalry. Among belugas, not all social interactions are peaceful. Males sometimes engage in fierce competition for dominance. These battles aren't always lethal, but they can be intense. Large males lock jaws, thrash the water, and push one another with incredible force. These confrontations often determine mating rights and access to key areas within the pod. For younger males, the consequences can be serious. Losing a fight may mean exclusion from certain social groups or less access to mating opportunities. It's a world where hierarchy matters and every push or collision carries social and sometimes physical risks. Even adult males, seasoned and experienced, must remain alert, as a challenge can arise at any moment. For a pod that must cooperate to survive in harsh Arctic conditions, internal conflicts are both dangerous and unavoidable. Hunter communication, the lifeline under threat. Belugas are often called sea canaries for their vocalizations, and for good reason. Pods rely on a complex symphony of whistles, clicks, and chirps to coordinate movement, find prey, and maintain social bonds. Without this communication, a pod can fragment, leaving individuals isolated and vulnerable. But human activity is interfering with this vital system. Shipping lanes, industrial noise, and oil exploration create a constant background hum in the water. Belugas respond by changing their calls. Some call louder, some shift frequencies, but these adaptations come at a cost. Energy is spent producing sound that may still be drowned out. Stress levels rise, and social cohesion weakens. When pods can't communicate effectively, the entire community suffers. Calves may become separated, hunting becomes less efficient, and the protective benefits of the pod are reduced. In some cases, researchers have documented pods that appear confused or fragmented because of noise pollution. Whales wander into dangerous areas, separate from their mothers, or fail to coordinate movements during predator encounters. The very social system that makes belugas resilient can also be undermined by human disruption. Calves at risk. Calves are particularly vulnerable in social systems disrupted by noise, stress, or internal pod tension. Normally, mothers and other adults in the pod guide the young, teaching them hunting strategies and navigation. But sometimes calves are rejected, lost, or accidentally abandoned. A lost calf in the Arctic is in grave danger. It may starve, be caught by predators, or struggle to keep pace with the pod. Even within a stable pod, social hierarchy can affect calf survival. Dominant males and older adults influence pod movement and decisions, sometimes forcing younger mothers or weak individuals to travel farther than ideal. These pressures can inadvertently put calves at risk, demonstrating how complex and fragile beluga social structures are. The complexity of beluga societies. Beluga society is a delicate balance. Pods provide protection, guidance, and teaching, but they also introduce challenges. Internal competition, male dominance struggles, and social tensions are realities of life in close quarters. Human-induced communication breakdowns magnify these challenges, sometimes leading to pod fragmentation or calf loss. For a species that relies on social cohesion for survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth, social struggles are more than drama. They are survival risks. Every decision, every interaction, and every sound in the water can influence whether a whale lives or dies. Adaptation and resilience. Despite these challenges, belugas remain incredibly adaptive. They develop strategies to minimize conflict, support vulnerable calves, and maintain communication even in noisy environments. Pods will sometimes merge temporarily to provide safety or split to reduce tension. Calves learn not only from mothers but from observing interactions among adults, gaining survival skills while navigating complex social dynamics. Belugas demonstrate that social systems, while fraught with struggle, are also the key to thriving in a world full of predators, harsh climates, and human pressures. Their society may not be perfect, but it's resilient, adaptive, and critical to their survival. 7. Human interference. The modern threats to belugas. For thousands of years, beluga whales navigated the Arctic and subarctic waters, relying on ice, pods, and keen instincts to survive. But in the last century, a new and unprecedented danger has appeared. Humans. From entertainment to industrial activity, humans have transformed the Arctic into a hazardous place for whales. Even creatures perfectly adapted to extreme environments now struggle to survive in a world shaped by human hands. Capture for entertainment. Belugas have long captivated human imagination. Their ghostly white color, playful behavior, and smiling faces make them seem friendly and approachable. This charm has made them targets for the aquarium and marine park industry. Across the globe, belugas have been captured from the wild to perform in captivity, displayed for entertainment, and bred for profit. Capturing a beluga is a traumatic event. It involves chasing pods into confined areas, separating calves from mothers, and transporting them hundreds or even thousands of miles. Many whales never recover from the stress. Some die during capture or transit, while others develop lifelong health problems. Calves torn from their mothers face an especially harsh fate, losing not only nutrition, but essential social learning. The very traits that make belugas fascinating to humans, their vocalizations, intelligence, and social behavior, make captivity a cruel environment. In aquariums, the lack of space, inability to hunt naturally, and forced social structures lead to anxiety, depression, and repetitive, abnormal behaviors. Even when belugas survive the initial trauma, lifespans are drastically shortened in captivity. While wild belugas can live up to 70 years, many in marine parks survive only 20 to 30 years, often due to stress-related illnesses, infections, and reduced immune function. The smiling face that humans adore masks immense suffering behind glass tanks. Pollution, poison in the water. Belugas are also victims of a more insidious human threat: pollution. Arctic waters, once pristine, now contain heavy metals, industrial chemicals, and microplastics. These toxins accumulate in fish and squid, the primary diet of belugas. When whales consume contaminated prey, the chemicals accumulate in their blubber, affecting reproduction, immunity, and overall health. Studies have shown that pollutants like mercury, PCBs, and other heavy metals can reduce fertility, impair neurological development in calves, and even shorten lifespans. Microplastics, ingested accidentally, can damage organs or block nutrient absorption. For a species that already faces harsh environmental conditions, pollution adds yet another layer of pressure. It's a slow, invisible threat, but one with profound consequences for beluga populations. To ship strikes and sonar interference. Industrial activity has introduced new hazards to belugas' once quiet waters. Shipping lanes now crisscross the Arctic, with massive freighters and cruise ships creating constant movement. Collisions are a real danger. Belugas can be struck by vessels, sustaining injuries or dying outright. Calves and slower individuals are particularly vulnerable. Even if they avoid physical contact, the noise of engines, sonar, and drilling interferes with essential communication. Belugas depend on echolocation to navigate under ice, find food, and maintain social bonds. Constant industrial noise drowns out these signals. Research has shown that whales alter their vocalizations in noisy environments, increasing stress and energy expenditure. But even these adaptations cannot fully compensate. Pods may fragment, calves may become separated, and feeding efficiency drops, all of which threaten survival. The cumulative effect. The impacts of human interference are not isolated, they compound. A whale that has been exposed to pollutants may be less able to survive capture or avoid ship strikes. A pod stressed by noise may be less coordinated when hunting or evading predators. Each human-induced stressor, whether captivity, pollution, or industrial noise, adds to the already formidable challenges of Arctic life. For a species that evolved over thousands of years to thrive in extreme conditions, humans have introduced threats that are entirely unnatural and difficult to adapt to. The consequences are visible. Population declines in some regions, behavioral changes in affected pods, and health problems in both calves and adults. Stories from the field. Documented cases of belugas struggling in captivity or under human pressure illustrate the severity of the problem. In some marine parks, whales display repetitive swimming patterns, head bobbing, or constant vocalizations, behaviors linked to stress and frustration. In polluted rivers like the St. Lawrence estuary, scientists have observed reproductive issues and reduced calf survival. In Arctic shipping lanes, beluga sightings have decreased near heavily trafficked areas, suggesting avoidance or mortality from collisions and noise. These examples aren't isolated. They are snapshots of a widespread problem affecting beluga populations across the Northern Hemisphere. The whale's natural behaviors, their social structures, and even their remarkable intelligence are being challenged in ways they have never faced before. Kafka call for conservation. Despite these pressures, there is hope. Conservation efforts are underway to protect belugas from human interference. Some regions have implemented protected marine areas, shipping restrictions, and pollution controls. Research continues into understanding the effects of noise and contaminants, aiming to guide policy that reduces harm. Captive programs are also evolving, with increased focus on enrichment, proper social groupings, and efforts to mimic natural environments. While captivity can never fully replicate the wild, responsible practices reduce suffering and preserve knowledge about these incredible whales. Ultimately, the story of human interference with belugas is a cautionary tale. It reminds us that even the most resilient and highly adapted species can be threatened by our actions. And while belugas have survived for thousands of years in one of Earth's harshest environments, their future now depends on the choices humans make. 8. Why they still matter. Belugas more than just white whales. For centuries, beluga whales have been icons of the Arctic. Their ghostly white color, playful behavior, and vocal calls have captivated humans from afar. But these whales are far more than just a fascinating spectacle. They play a critical role in the Arctic ecosystem, influence human culture, and inspire global conservation efforts. Despite facing predators, harsh climates, and human interference, belugas remain a vital part of life in the North. Keystone species of the Arctic. Belugas are what scientists call a keystone species. Their presence affects the entire ecosystem. As predators, they help regulate populations of fish, squid, and crustaceans, maintaining balance in marine food webs. By feeding in certain areas and defecating in others, they contribute nutrients that support plankton and other microscopic life, the very foundation of the Arctic food chain. When belugas struggle, the effects ripple outward. Overpopulation of certain fish species or depletion of prey can disrupt the delicate balance of Arctic waters. Other marine mammals, birds, and even human fisheries rely indirectly on beluga populations. In essence, protecting belugas is not just about saving a single species. It's about preserving the health of an entire ecosystem. Cultural significance to indigenous peoples. Belugas also hold deep cultural and practical importance for indigenous Arctic communities. For generations, Inuit, Chukchi, and other northern peoples have relied on belugas for sustenance, tools, and clothing. Every part of the whale has been used thoughtfully: blubber for nutrition, meat for food, skin for tools, and bones for construction. Beyond survival, belugas are woven into stories, songs, and spiritual traditions. They are symbols of endurance, intelligence, and connection to the ocean. Losing belugas would not only disrupt ecosystems, it would erode centuries of cultural knowledge and heritage. These whales represent a link between humans and the natural world, reminding us that survival in the Arctic is a shared journey. In conservation efforts and progress. The good news is that conservation efforts are making a difference. International agreements, marine protected areas, and stricter hunting regulations have helped stabilize some beluga populations. Organizations monitor water quality, track migration patterns, and study health indicators to better protect whales from disease, pollution, and industrial interference. Community-based conservation is particularly powerful. Indigenous groups are collaborating with scientists to create sustainable management plans, ensuring that hunting traditions continue without threatening populations. Some regions have successfully reduced industrial noise and shipping traffic during critical migration periods, allowing pods to feed and communicate safely. These initiatives show that even in a changing world, humans can work alongside nature rather than against it. Kick the uphill battle. Despite these efforts, belugas still face an uphill battle. Climate change continues to melt sea ice, altering migration and feeding patterns. Pollution remains a constant threat, and industrial activity is expanding into previously untouched areas. The Arctic is warming faster than any other region on Earth, and belugas must adapt to an environment that is shifting at an unprecedented pace. Survival is no longer guaranteed by evolution alone. Protection, monitoring, and international cooperation are critical. Every pod that survives is a testament to resilience, adaptation, and the importance of human stewardship, a symbol of resilience and hope. Belugas remind us that even in one of the harshest environments on Earth, life persists against incredible odds. They are not just survivors, they are teachers. Their struggles highlight the impacts of human activity, the importance of ecosystem balance, and the value of cultural heritage. By protecting belugas, we are also protecting the Arctic itself, the frozen seas, the migratory fish, and the communities that have depended on them for generations. These whales still matter, not only for what they contribute to the environment, but for what they teach us about resilience, adaptation, and the interconnectedness of life. 9. Conclusion. Punchline. The beluga's smile, a misleading facade. So yes, beluga whales may look like they're always grinning. Their pale, ghostly faces, upturned mouths, and playful demeanor give the impression of constant happiness. But as we've seen throughout this journey, appearances can be deceiving. Beneath that seemingly cheerful exterior lies a life full of struggle, survival, and constant adaptation. If you were born a beluga, smiling might be the last thing on your mind. From the moment they are born, belugas face harsh realities. Calves begin life gray or brown, vulnerable and dependent on their mother's milk, dodging predators from day one. The Arctic isn't the pristine wonderland it looks like to human eyes. It's a freezing, shifting, and sometimes deadly environment. Ice that provides shelter can trap them. Currents and storms can separate pods, and hunger is never far away. Predators and perils everywhere. Every day, belugas navigate waters filled with threats. Orcas stalk them with precision. Polar bears wait silently at breathing holes. And humans, whether through hunting, pollution, or industrial noise, add yet another layer of danger. Even a single mistake, surfacing at the wrong spot, straying too far from the pod, or being caught in industrial activity, can mean death. Living under constant threat is a stressful, exhausting reality. And yet, belugas survive. They rely on one another, communicate with complex calls, and navigate an environment that changes year after year. Their resilience is extraordinary, but it comes at a cost. Showed us a changing home. Climate change has transformed the Arctic at a pace no species has ever experienced before. Ice melts earlier, forms later, and entire ecosystems shift in response. Food sources move or disappear. Diseases and invasive species enter the northern seas. Noise pollution drowns out the vital calls that keep pods together. Belugas are forced to adapt on the fly, an impossible task for a species evolved to thrive under stable, icy conditions. Human interference compounds these natural challenges. Captivity, ship strikes, heavy metals, plastics, and industrial noise further jeopardize survival. Even as belugas have lived through millennia of Arctic extremes, they now face pressures that evolution alone cannot solve. Social struggles and resilience. Even within their pods, life is not easy. Males compete for dominance. Calves may be rejected or lost. Communication breakdowns caused by human noise can fragment communities. Yet despite these social struggles, belugas have developed incredible resilience. Their pods function as survival networks, teaching, guiding, and protecting one another. These whales remind us that life is about more than survival. It's about cooperation, adaptation, and connection. Why we should care. Belugas are more than just creatures that live in the Arctic. They are keystone species critical to maintaining the balance of their ecosystem. They are cultural treasures central to indigenous Arctic communities who have coexisted with them for thousands of years. They are indicators of environmental health, signaling the impact of climate change, pollution, and industrial activity on fragile ecosystems. Caring about belugas means caring about the Arctic itself, about the food webs they maintain, the people who rely on them, and the broader planet we all share. Protecting them isn't just an act of empathy, It's an investment in the future of the Arctic and our global environment. Final reflection and punchline. So next time you see a beluga, that smile may seem inviting, playful, or serene. But remember, it hides a life that is cold, dangerous, and constantly threatened. If you live their life, you might not be smiling either. Between freezing waters, cunning predators, melting homes, and human interference, being born a beluga is no easy ride. And that is why their story matters. Paying attention to their struggles, supporting conservation efforts, and protecting the Arctic environment ensures that these incredible whales continue to survive, thrive, and remind us of the resilience of life in one of the harshest places on Earth. The beluga's smile is not just a mask. It is a challenge, an invitation, and a call for all of us to care.